Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Patrick Liu, and I'm going to be your host for the Diabetes Survival Guide show. I'm the founder of the Diabetes Management Group, where I am a fitness and wellness coach for people with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. And this show will be a way to share the phenomenal stories about people with all forms of diabetes, healthcare professionals who work with people with diabetes, health and wellness coaches who work with people in this population, and or caregivers and relatives with people with diabetes across the world. A little bit of a personal background for me as a show starter is I was diagnosed with prediabetes back in 2021 and made some modifications to my lifestyle and habits to successfully reverse it in 2022. However, that onset of me receiving prediabetes in 2021 triggered my memories of when my grandpa, who passed away when I was a sophomore in high school from kidney failure secondary to his type 2 diabetes, about the care that was misunderstood and not the greatest at that time. So I want to provide this show as a way to explore the different spectrums of diabetes and healthcare professionals sharing their tips of what they've seen helpful in working with folks with them, and then some things that weren't as helpful so that y'all can learn something. So thank you so much, and we'll get started with the disclaimers and the show.
Disclaimers. This show is not medical advice or a treatment plan and may contain sensitive and explicit content. It is intended for general education and demonstration purposes only. This content should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat any health, medical, or physical conditions. Don't use this show to avoid going to your own healthcare professional or to replace the advice they give you. Consult with your healthcare provider before attempting anything you learned in this show. You agree to identify and hold harmless the creators of this material for any and all losses, injury, or damages resulting from any and all claims that arise from your use or misuse of this show material. The creators and guests of this show make no representations about the accuracy or suitability of this content. Use these materials at your sole risk. Views and opinions are individual to the creators and guests of this show and do not represent any other opinions or entities and are not intended to offend anybody. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Diabetes Survival Guide show with Patrick, and I am super stoked to have on an amazing guest. So John is the founder of Pump Clothing Company, where he created briefs for people with type 1 diabetes or anyone who has insulin pumps. And it's just really awesome to hear his story because he's been frustrated with the other clothes that are out there, and sometimes it just gets tangled up with the clothes that one would have on, or whenever he was trying to go to bed and all of a sudden he wakes up in the middle of the night and the pump's already taken out. So he decided to take the innovation approach of finding a solution to the problem and created a company where they create briefs specifically for people with their insulin pumps. So it's stored appropriately, it's easy to care for, and it just allows for the opportunity for people to have less of a hassle trying to manage their medical equipment. So I'm super stoked to have John on board here. And John, feel free to introduce yourself, tell us about your diagnosis story, and about how you start up the company for the things that I didn't already mention.
Yeah, like you said, I'm John. I grew up here in Minnesota. I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 14. That was 8 years ago now.
Jeez.
Yeah, been a long time. Started out with MDI. If you don't know what that is, that's multiple daily injections. So every time I eat, I have to take a certain amount of insulin for the carbs in the food that I'm about to eat. Diagnosis story. I guess how we figured out is this would have been freshman year of high school. I guess I started to notice I was waking up a lot at night to use the bathroom. A ton, constantly drinking water, and I guess it never really alerted anybody because nobody knew until, so there was a bathroom right next to my room, and my room was downstairs at the time. So when that toilet broke, I had to go upstairs, and the first night after the toilet broke, my mom talked to me in the morning and she's, hey, you went to the bathroom like 6 times last night. Something's definitely got to be up. And my dad's a type 1 diabetic, so they're a little aware of symptoms. And with me already being 14, we thought, okay, I'm past the hump because my dad got diagnosed at 7. Generally, when you do get diagnosed, it's a lot of younger kids. So we thought we were past that, me and my sibling. But my mom's, let's just test your blood to see. And luckily had the glucose monitor right at the house because my dad was a diabetic. And I tested my blood sugar, and all it read was HI. And
Oh my
basically,
gosh.
that was just out of the range that the glucose monitor could actually give me a reading for, which was over 400. Yeah, very confidently, my dad just gave me a couple units of insulin and immediately dropped my blood sugars, and we just self-diagnosed from there. We're like, all right, I'm joining the gang.
Oh my God. Did he say that? Quotation marks?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Yeah, went to the doctor the next day, and he just brought me right to his doctor, and there wasn't much of a diagnosis. It was more of a, here's your insulin, here's how it's going to work, and a lot less scary for me because I grew up watching my dad with diabetes. Already understood what kind of things I was taking on, so yeah, didn't seem too daunting. I didn't actually get an insulin pump for another year. Got on a pump. It was one of the older Medtronic pumps, so there was no continuous glucose monitors yet. So it was cool to have the pump, but all it really allowed me to do is not have to poke myself with the needles as often.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I heard a bunch of stories with that too, and I'm thinking to myself, ugh, props to y'alls.
And then, so I did really good with my diabetes for quite a while. I would say being around my dad helped. My parents definitely kept me on track, had super good A1Cs. And then when college came along, I didn't get bad with my diabetes, but you could see my A1C start to slip a little bit. And that's when I realized, okay, I have to start taking this a little more serious. Got a new doctor, an endo that I actually like to see. And that's when I got on the Tandem pump. And if you've never heard of the new Tandem T-Slim, it works in unison with Dexcom G6. That was a total game changer for me. It was like, it went from pricking my finger all the time to just constantly knowing what my blood sugar was, and my pump would react accordingly. It's awesome. But the one thing I couldn't get over still was like, how annoying is it that I have a tube on my side all the time? Like, I'm walking through my kitchen, it's catching on the drawers. Like you said, I go to bed, I wake up tangled in the tubing, and I'm like, I'm really surprised that there's not more options for this already. And after doing a little bit of research, there are options for pocket clothing for underwear. What I was seeing wasn't anything I was interested in. A lot of it is a slip-in pocket. That kind of forces the boxers to have to be super tight, because if you just have a slip-in pocket, it's pointless. If you have a loose boxer, it'll just fall out. Some of the zipper options only had pockets on one side,
Ooh.
which is annoying because if you have an insulin pump, you need to switch sites about every 4 weeks. I don't really want my tubing to have to cross my body. After just realizing it's either way overpriced, inaccessible, or it just seems to not be operated by someone who's actually diabetic, I was like, I think I can make a much, much better version of this.
And then the birth of the
Yeah.
pump clothing company came to be.
It's basically what I was getting in bed, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it this time. I've thought this 100 times. I'm just going to make the underwear with the pockets I like. And
Awesome.
yeah.
Super pumped in to hear that. Pun definitely intended. If y'all don't know, I love puns. So if anyone walks up and tells me a dad joke or something, I will love you forever. All right. I would say it's very awesome that you had your dad who was there to show you the process when you got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, or I guess when they learned about it, as well
Yeah.
as having him as a good role model throughout those times. Because I know for some of the other people that have been on here on the show, they have mentioned that their family members didn't know what was going on. And from the previous episode with Dr. Hannah Hamlin, for her, when she received the instructional video from her healthcare provider, it was in Spanish, so they didn't quite understand what was going on, and trying to learn how to do the injections and trying to undergo that process, it was just extremely difficult and faced a lot of hardship. So if you also haven't checked out that episode, feel free to check that out. That one's episode number 6. And then also with Dr. Axelson, so Tyler Axelson, like him not being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes until he was 25 years old. And like for him, since that's way past the typical range that people are diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, it was just insane and crazy to hear those situations, especially the frequency and urge to go to the bathroom multiple times throughout the night, and And for him, it got to the point where he got thrush. So I'm not sure if any viewers are too familiar with thrush is, but that's essentially more of a fungal outgrowth on one's tongue because there's just so much excess sugars that are in the bloodstream of that it causes that infection. So it's one of the other signs that can be associated with someone with diabetes. So just being careful about those signs is pretty huge. And also making sure you have a support system that is aware and there for you. And of course, when someone decides to go to college and your parents aren't around, I'm sure that was a huge culture shock per se. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing your story about that. And I guess with that, I wanted to know, and I'm sure the audience wants to know, what has been the hardest moment since your diagnosis, and what would you say has been the most difficult thing about starting up your business, and what did you learn from each of those journeys?
For the diabetes, I would say the hardest lesson I've learned with diabetes is it took me a long time to realize that I was going to have to make actual changes to my diet to be able to stay in the ranges I wanted. I understand being diabetic, you can eat whatever you want as long as you dose correctly, but there's more to insulin regulation than just carb counting. I don't know if you saw the post on my page the other day. I was advocating for having a good mix of protein, fats, and fibers in because not all carbs are the same. For someone with a really balanced diet to eat, say, 40 carbs, they're going to react to that carb count very different to someone with a completely different diet. So it took a really long time for me to get over it, but I realize now like a balanced diet is just as essential as good carb counting. And ever since I've started applying those things, my time in range has gotten much higher, much happier A1Cs.
That's good. Happy to hear that. And as well as those handstands too from your videos.
Yeah,
Definitely helpful for being able to do those.
I need the pump underwear. They'll definitely pump will fall right out of my
Yep,
pocket.
exactly.
Right. And the biggest lesson on starting this company is definitely patience. Right when I got started, I'm so excited and I want things to move so quickly. And I just realized, okay, if I want to make it good as I want it to be, then I have to really take my time on this and dial everything in. Because I just really went back and forth with things like, all right, where on my body do I want the pump sitting? Just because I don't want it to sit in a spot where it's interfering with anything, especially things in the pocket was a concern. Because that's a big thing for me too, is being able to put the pump in a spot where now my pockets are fully accessible. As a diabetic with an insulin pump, one of my pockets has been preoccupied for the last 6 years. So to be able to have both is pretty awesome.
It changes one's ability to live out in that world because that extra pocket, y'all, I'm not sure, but it's like you could fit your wallet on one side and phone on the other, and it's a magical experience.
Right.
It's the
Yeah.
small things that people don't really realize.
Small convenience things. Or if you look at some of like my older pump before I got this one, it was always in a pocket with keys or something else. So the screen on that pump is just destroyed,
Mhm.
constantly knocking against stuff. But with its own dedicated pocket, it's very safe and secure.
Yep, and it makes it last longer too, because if that protects the screen and allows it so it doesn't get scratched up as much from the keys, or if it doesn't hit up with other things that's in one's pockets, then that helps significantly. So it's that small little bit of care that makes a huge difference.
Yep, and pump users know when you put your keys in the same pocket as your pump and you go to pull that out and the tubing
Oh no.
keys, not fun.
Yeah, for those who don't quite understand that experience, a good analogy that y'all can imagine is imagine putting your car keys and your wire headphones together in one pocket and just going for a 2 mile run and then trying to untangle that mess. So it's probably
Very
that
much,
same sort of severity with that, wouldn't you say?
definitely.
So that puts some perspective on you with that situation. All right, I would say it's pretty impactful too, circling back and talking about how much of a difference having a balanced diet is, because if one is able to really up your amount of protein intake, like that plays just a huge role. And as well as fiber. I've been receiving some comments on my Instagram post or on somebody else's Instagram post saying that all carbohydrates is bad for people with diabetes. And it came to the point where they even said fiber is a bad carbohydrate because it's considered a carbohydrate. But then I'm thinking to myself, but the science says that our body doesn't digest it. Instead, it just helps aid in our digestion process and improves our intestinal health. So I'd say really that you took accountability and taking full action for yourself to improve your diet has been huge. And I think it's great that you mentioned fats, protein, and fiber, because having those would actually delay the responses of our body to digest the carbohydrates, that it allows for our blood sugar levels to have more of that consistency throughout its ranges, which is great. And additionally, it would also help too with a longevity standpoint, because you are getting those nutrients inside of you. Of course, protein's great because one would be able to build more like lean body mass, building up that muscle. So it's great gains for somebody and just allows for more of their ability to regulate their blood sugars more appropriately, improving their insulin sensitivity, and overall just living a happier, healthier life and feeling a lot stronger and supporting one's ability to get yoked and getting big.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. So the next question I want to ask is, what has been your best experience or your best client experience with someone who's invested into your company, and what did you learn so far from it?
Yeah, I would just say everyone that has pushed me to make it actually happen. That's definitely, it's just really nice when you come up with something and you have a lot of people behind you.
Mhm.
It just multiplies my own excitement and keeps me motivated. So, yeah, just really thankful for all the people that have helped me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
super. That's awesome. I'm super happy to hear that you have a lot of people who are able to help you understand how big your dream and your mission is to get this going. Especially come from someone myself who is a fellow entrepreneur in the diabetes community, trying to make a positive difference in the peoples out there, and just getting that initiative to start and get going and being consistent with it and having that patience. Because starting a business, I'm not sure if you have ever heard of Alex and Layla Hormazi, but they're some really big entrepreneurs that I really look up to, and they are considering breaking the $1 billion barrier. And that's what I hope to accomplish too with the diabetes management group, is to break through that $1 billion barrier. And that increased amount of wealth would just be then used to invest into other initiatives to really support and grow the community, or growing up the resources to support the community. And that patience and understanding that if one wants to build a company or one wants to build like something huge, that the mission is bigger than themselves, it's going to take time. And one of the things that stuck with me is, if someone's wanting to make $1 million in a year compared to making $1 billion later in the future, then that process of creating a business for that $1 million doesn't need as much of a solid foundation and a structure. But for the one who's wanting to build something that is way bigger, then having that patience, because sometimes it could take as much as 3 to 4 or even 7 years before that foundation is finally set, and then everything starts to pick up together, that eventually just explodes out of control in a good way. Or I guess exploding towards the growth that one is wanting, that exponential growth curve, and finally getting out of that valley of despair that people talk about whenever they start a entrepreneurial journey. But once they do get out of it, then they realize it was all worth it in the end because of all the lives that they were able to impact.
it's like you make it overnight because of the 5 years you put in before.
Exactly. And eventually it just pays dividends in the future, that you're like, all right, we're set for a good amount of time and let's keep making this thing awesome. And eventually, once it gets to the point where one can start hiring, I'm excited for that process where I could actually start hiring my first person in my organization, because that would mean, wow, that means I'm not just supporting myself, but I'm also going to be supporting them and their families too. And for me, that just plays a huge impact of, this thing is going to go places, and being able to support other people throughout their journey, not just through the client and the business perspective, but also the people who are assisting with running the business and having it pump through. That I feel like is going to be amazing, seeing your growth and then being able to utilize like those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. On my first e-commerce endeavor, it still operates. I have a small. If do you know what a fingerboard is? It's like a
Uh,
miniature.
Not quite.
If you remember Tech Decks, it's like a finger skateboard kind of.
Oh, yeah, I do have a tech deck. I have two of them right now. It's great.
Nice. Yeah. This was my first e-commerce endeavor. Like I said, I sell fingerboard wheels. They're like urethane wheels, so they're made from the same material as a real skateboard. For that company, I hired my first W-2 employee last year, and he does a lot of my manufacturing now. It's just awesome to provide not only income for them, but a work experience that is super flexible. They're coming into work to do something they actually want to do, working for a boss that you're not afraid to call on a day you don't want to come in. Just provide a good experience for them.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I'm getting chills right now too, because I'm imagining that just the people that come into work for not just work, I wouldn't really say working for us, but instead working with us to pursue the mission and fulfilling the values of the organization and company. That for me, that just gets me going, because best business practices, in my opinion, is literally knowing where is this corporation and business going and how can we work with each other and collaborate with each other to achieve that. Because whoever gets hired onto the team, we all have different strengths and talents that will go into achieving that larger goal that we have for each other.
Yeah, and as long as that goal is communicated throughout the whole team, it's fun to work on this stuff.
Yeah, and the creativity component too, like being able to pitch ideas with everybody and just getting their inputs to figure out how can we grow this thing so it can better serve other people. Oh, that always gets me excited. I don't know about you.
Yeah, having everyone together, it's more of a multiply off each other than up.
Most definitely. And that's great that you have that experience too.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. And before we continue with the rest of this show, I wanted to let y'all know, please feel free to give this podcast a 5-star rating if you like it, share it with other folks that you think it'd be beneficial for. And if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe and follow to the Diabetes Management Group for awesome tips to manage your type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. And let's get back to the show.
All right. So the next thing I wanted to ask is if you were to share one piece of advice to yourself when you were first diagnosed and another piece of advice when you were in the brainstorming phase of starting your business or getting your business going, what would they be?
Advice for diabetes. I would say just take it serious, learn it yourself. I would say I put too much of a crutch on my parents to make sure I had everything straight, and managed to figure that out when I didn't have them right next to me. But just it would have been a smoother transition if I would have put the time in earlier to learn it for myself. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
definitely prepare a little more, care a little more right away, which is hard. I was 14.
Yeah,
I probably to ignore the fact that it was even a thing to begin with. So
the priorities probably at those times, especially coming from us guys freshman year, is all right, what can I do to be popular? What can I do to impress the girls? And what can I do to get the grades that I need and do what I can to pass school?
yeah, and the last thing I want to do is be the guy poking myself in the lunchroom.
Yeah, totally get that.
Yeah, and then advice for the underwear. I think honestly just get started earlier, because I tossed this idea around in my head for probably way too long. If I would have just took action sooner, I could be worlds ahead. But I don't know, I guess I'm still pretty happy with where it's at. I think I started it at a good time.
Yeah, I feel like it's when's the best time to plant a tree? They would say best time to plant the tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. And
Yeah.
because after all, would one rather wait another day or another year or X amount of time before they're able to kickstart their organization? Or would one rather take action now to see where it goes and put their efforts into making it a reality and then taking the learning lessons from it? Because from my perspective, even if it doesn't grow to the point where one envisioned it to be, I feel like there's a huge learning lesson that could come from it, which would then plant the seeds for making something even bigger to come through it. And I feel like with your company, with Pump Clothing Company, that it's just going to be that foundation has that's going to grow to a in my opinion, I feel like you could probably go international. I'm not sure if that's already your goal, if you are doing that right now, but that's something that I feel like can impact a lot of people and can definitely be distributed that way. And in my opinion, too, for even folks who don't have like type 1 diabetes or like a pump, I feel like that extra zipper pocket can be used for beneficial for other things. Because I'm sure there's probably some other diagnosis that's out there that someone can probably benefit from having that extra pocket in their briefs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's nice too. There's two pockets, so I always have that extra one. And a lot of the times, like my AirPod case when I'm at the gym, it's like I want this on me so I can put them away when I want to. But gym short pockets, like every time you sit down at a machine or at a bench, like everything in your pockets
Just
dumps.
plops out. Yeah. There we go. So if anyone's wanting the pockets to store their AirPod case in, then it's perfect for gym wear.
For the gym, yep.
It's
It
vetted
can't
and tested.
hurt having the pocket.
Exactly. All right. So, John, the thing that I love to ask everyone who comes on this show is, what is your zombie apocalypse survival plan?
I don't know if I have much of a plan, but if there's one thing I need to do, it's stock up on insulin.
Yeah, uh-huh.
I probably, got to be honest, I'm going to have to switch back to injections. I don't think I can deal with all the setup for a pump I don't think I'd last very long trying to run a pump.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What makes you say that though?
I would just say the amount of supplies that I have to constantly be switching out. Thinking about how big of a box of stuff 6 months worth of pump supplies is, it's a good sized box. So if I need to stock up for more than a year, I need a warehouse full of pump supplies.
Gotcha. Who knows? Maybe we can just raid a warehouse together and then and
Right?
hole ourselves up inside that warehouse so that we can
We'll just, yeah, live in a Medtronic warehouse.
yeah, live in the Medtronic warehouse, but also have the ability to recruit somebody who's able to make insulin and
Yeah,
synthesize it. I think that's the important thing.
for sure. Or I just go keto.
Oh my goodness.
The smallest amount of insulin I can use. Maybe not. I don't know how long I'd last doing that either.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any research studies for people surviving with keto and type 1 diabetes and reducing the amount of insulin that they would need for it. Because I'm not sure if you know Ben Zeal.
Doesn't ring a bell, no.
Yeah, so Ben Zeal, he's a type 1 diabetic and has had it, I think he's had it since he was in his early teens or something like that. And he's a registered dietitian and has his strength and conditioning specialist certification. I think he's the only like person with that stacked of credentials and that stacked of experience that he's able
I
to
do know
provide.
that. Pretty sure he's from Minnesota too. He's always wearing a Twins hat.
Maybe I haven't been able to see
His name's
his.
like Man of Steel
Yeah,
on.
Man of Zeal. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I think there was this one story where he decided to go to this all you can eat meat buffet and he just was like, "Great, I don't have to count for any carbs or anything like that because this is just straight up protein." And then he just eats all that stuff and then afterwards when he was done and went to bed at night, he woke up because of super high blood sugars and the reason why is because eventually down the line, like the proteins can then eventually be converted into carbohydrates downstream because that's just how our body works in
Yeah.
those situations that being wary of those is pretty important and still having some insulin on the side is pretty important for folks.
One thing that's really weird, and I'll have to do some more of my own research. I know I've seen a post or two about this, but the effect of caffeine on blood sugar too.
Yeah, do you care if I give my input on that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so for caffeine, if we take a step back and think about it, what does it essentially do? So it raises our heart rate and it stimulates the release of more of our fight or flight system. So it makes us more energetic, more focused in that aspect. For some people, it depends on someone's ability to receive the caffeine and depending on the receptors for that. But essentially, that, in my opinion, would actually increase the blood sugar within the body because it could stimulate the release of stress hormones to try and keep us awake that would allow us to be more in that level. But then again, it also depends on how sensitive one is to caffeine because if they're not that sensitive to it, then I feel like it may not have as much of a drastic effect. But if one does have more of a sensitivity towards it, then that could impact one's blood sugars and the effects of that. Now, of course, like this isn't medical advice, this is just general education based off of the readings that I've seen and the medical articles that I've seen. And of course, everyone's ability to utilize caffeine is different, and you having the continuous glucose monitor on the side just to see the trends is pretty important, in my opinion, just to see how one's body reacts to it. But generally, from my perspective and opinion, it would typically keep blood sugars a bit higher because of the release of other hormones in the body that generally keeps blood sugars higher due to needing that ability to convert those blood sugars to then send it to the muscles to and organs to keep it in a more responsive state.
Yeah, I definitely find the same thing. It's just, I find it funny that, and I don't mean to hate on any of the doctors because they try to keep it as simple as possible. Already unload information onto you. But
Yeah.
I didn't realize until I got the continuous glucose monitor that I can have a completely zero carb, no sugar energy drink with some caffeine in it. And if I drink that at around 100 blood sugar, I will creep. It's not quite as drastic as, say, eating a bunch of carbs, but just seeing that go up, and I just would have never had that insight having to just prick my finger. And the same thing with the proteins, like you were saying. Yeah, like you can go a full carbless diet and eventually you still get that climb.
Yeah, and it's like way more downstream because it's not going to happen instantly compared to eating carbohydrates by itself, but it's the
Yeah.
downstream effect that people don't realize because it's the whole maybe 2 hours later, 3 hours later, or 4 hours later. It depends on someone's metabolism and how quickly it's able to break it down or how long it breaks it down. But also
Yeah.
taking a step back and understanding what's the processes behind that. Because if one is able to understand the physiology behind it, which I've been in the fortunate opportunity to take more of an interest in it and taking a look at it myself. And granted, I don't know if medical programs, from the last time that I checked, and if someone wants to prove me wrong by typing in the comments down below, feel free to do so or message me. But the last time that I checked, med schools don't require their students to take exercise physiology. And in my opinion, that plays a huge role because walking is a great activity to lower one's blood sugar levels as well as releasing positive hormones in the body to decrease the amount of stress that's going on. And if one decreases the amount of stress, that means one has less cortisol, one has less adrenaline. So those factors go down. Thus, blood sugars are able to go down more easily. But then if someone decides to drink caffeine and then going for a walk, then those effects are going to be different because caffeine, of course, it stimulates the release of cortisol and adrenaline because that has more of that release like downstream because it increases like our heart rate and then all those other factors to stimulate the fight or flight response. And of course, it depends on people's bodies and how those streams and effects works. To my knowledge and understanding right now, and if I'm wrong, then I'll definitely correct myself. But this is just from my understanding of the things that I have read that just being wary of these effects. It's not exactly a one raises one and then one lowers one, and then they always have that effect, those effects of, oh, we can understandably predict how we can correct them together. It's not exactly because some of them it's like a delayed effect that one would need to be able to take a step back and realize how does their body respond and react to these different things together. Because if they all work together, oh, we know this raises blood sugar and oh, this lowers blood sugar, then that's great. It's very linear, but unfortunately, that's just not how our body works. Because sometimes it's a, oh, it raises it up instantly, but then this other one lowers it in 30 minutes. So, for example, insulin. That's why some people have to take their insulin 30 minutes before eating a meal or food, is because insulin is more of that delayed response compared to eating the food that one has. And of course, our body does a better job of trying to metabolize that and increasing it compared to the insulin being put in to try and re-regulate and establish those levels. So timing is huge.
Definitely. And one thing I've seen lately, and I'm constantly trying to get better at this too, is understanding the difference in the carbs that I'm eating. So you can eat the same amount of carbs in, say, strawberries as you do in bread, and you are going to have to time your insulin very differently for each of those carbs. Like something like a strawberry, it's going to very quickly raise your blood sugar, where bread, that's going to take a long time to actually, for all of that, probably a good 3 hours. Or maybe a more extreme example, say you slam a can of pop versus
Yeah.
eat a bit of bread. That pop or soda, I'm up here in Minnesota.
Depends on
But
whichever one.
yeah, soda can really take you up past 200 like that. So if you are going to have something like that, you should definitely, like you said, dose 30 minutes early. I honestly like to wait. If I'm going to have something sugary like a dessert, I like to dose, wait until I almost see the graph. Okay, we're trending towards a low. Now we can start eating this, because a lot of the times your insulin just won't be able to keep up with that super fast intake of carbs.
Yeah, and if we think about it too, the reason why it spikes up super higher, based off of my understanding, is if you take that sugar and then you process it even more, technically you've already sped up the digestion process. So it's easier for it to pass through our small intestines and get absorbed into the bloodstream is because we've already taken out more of that process through it compared to, let's say, eating the foods that have higher amounts of fiber in there. Of course, that delays the response because that causes our body to take longer to digest it. So then it's more of a slower rise in our blood sugars because of it too. And I love what you said about being sure to time it appropriately and making sure that it starts to dip down before you start eating the dessert, because that's when you know, okay, I have confirmation that it's starting to work, which is great. And then having that positive affirmation is good, and knowing how your body works in that way is awesome. And just building that ability of figuring out what works best for you. Because I feel like there's plenty of folks that are out there that's trying to push, oh, here's this one agenda and we have to follow this, like never eat sugary treats again. That's the
Yeah.
devil and everything. But I'm like, not exactly. If you're smart about it, your body is very resilient and adaptable. It just depends on how you are able to regulate and manage things. And for example, if someone wants to eat that cake, and then if they don't want to use as much insulin because maybe they're getting low before they can get their refills, then pairing it with some protein and then going on a long walk, like about 15 to 20-minute walk, like that can help significantly and drastically reduce the spike that one would get from their cake and dessert. And it's not that I would never tell somebody that you can't eat something ever again. It's more of a, okay, if you want to eat it, let's see what else we can do to pair with it so that one is able to eat it and appropriately measure it so that it isn't going to lead to more emergency health consequences. Instead, it's like it's already been proven and shown that we can do it in a balanced way. So let's do that because that's already been proven by research and science that we can do it. So I don't like it when someone tells that other people that they can't do X, Y, and Z things, or it's a devil, or those other sorts of things. When in reality, it's no, I understand how our body works to a certain extent, and it's awesome that we're always learning newer things right now. But if we look at the basics and the science and the fundamental of it, by being able to understand how the timing of everything works, or at least having a general understanding of it, one would be able to better regulate their ability to manage their diabetes.
Yeah, and we've got our whole lives to dial in our diet and figure out how we respond to things. That's one thing that's nice to do too, is you find after a few years, there's certain foods where you know for a fact, like I know exactly how to dose for this. You can eat and your endo could look at your graphs and wouldn't be able to tell that you had anything. And once you find those, it just takes a lot of weight off your shoulders. Because it is
Oh
kind
yeah.
of tough, especially like when I first got diagnosed, I didn't realize how crappy I felt until I got to feel good again. So like I've never been a big guy. I was probably like 130 pounds in like freshman year, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like, no, so I was 112 pounds. So that's an 18-pound difference. And I just remember getting my blood sugars back down. I was back up to 130, and we had to run the mile in gym. And I finished the mile, and I just wanted to keep going. I was like, wow, I can run again.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that for 6 months before that, I just felt like crap, had no idea.
Yeah, it's like I'm not, do you wear glasses at all or correctives?
Uh-uh.
No? Okay. Lucky you. But for those who are wondering what that feeling of good feels, let's take it for example for those who are wearing glasses or those who have pretty blurry vision, but then they got glasses and they realize, oh my gosh, like this is a new world. I can actually see again. Like that's
Yeah.
that sort of feeling. Or whenever one wakes up, like imagine when you're a kid again and you're full of energy, you're very rambunctious, and you could literally run for miles and run for days compared to where one is right now. That imagine taking that same energy that you had as a kid to now, that, hey, what if that was still possible? And the only difference was maybe one just isn't having the best diet at that point in time that is resulting in that, or one isn't drinking enough water or doing other actions that can actually improve one's ability to feel way more energetic and have an awesome time.
Like, how many people do you think feel pretty crappy right now and wouldn't realize until they actually made those changes in their diet and
Oh,
routine?
millions, billions of people, millions and billions of people, because I actually decided to invest into a health and wellness coach. Because after all, if I want to promote myself as a health and wellness coach, I got to make sure that I am taking care of myself and practice what I preach.
Right.
And I started, I did a comprehensive blood work panel just to see what's going on with my health. I really want to take it seriously so that I could better improve my lifespan and longevity, as well as being able to be more energetic to serve the people that I want to serve and collaborating with other people. And I found out that you have these lab marker values that are a little low, like my thyroid hormones were low, and then even my A1C scores with their markers. And I go with Merrick Health, and I love the organization and company because they're super up to date with the most recent practices and like research articles that LabCorp has nothing on them. Like I got the LabCorp stuff. They said, oh, you're fine except for maybe this one lab marker value. But then I took the Merrick Health one, and oh my gosh, like they said, this thing's a little low, this thing's low, this thing's low, this thing's high, this thing's low. You're good on some of these other ones, this thing's low. And then here's recommendations on what you could do to improve your diet, any supplementations that we'd recommend, or if it's more drastic, then here's some medications that we would recommend, and you could visit your healthcare provider for it, or the health and wellness coach will then talk you through it, and eventually you'll be paired with a physician or a healthcare provider within Merrick Health to discuss more of the effects of taking this medication. So it's like receiving that and then now being on the supplements that I'm currently on, I feel a night and day difference. I have way more mental clarity and the brain fog is like nearly non-existent. I don't have as much of the weariness or tiredness that I used to have. Now I have more of that energy. I can go for longer amounts of times and days, and I'm able to move a bit better, and I feel like I have more of that energy, and my memory is also a lot better too, that one just doesn't realize how awesome one can feel until they actually take that jump and actually invest into themselves and their body. And then you realize a huge difference. And I feel like my mood's a lot better too, just because I feel a lot better as well.
Yeah, when I switched from my old pump to my new pump, so for perspective, on the older pump, I didn't have the glucose monitor attached. And if you think about, so me walking around during the day, I am just naturally more insulin sensitive just because I'm moving, right? Active. Well, when I go to bed, the opposite kind of happens. And a lot of times what'll happen is like the insulin that I'm set to receive at a constant drip isn't enough to actually keep me at my level while I'm sleeping, since there's no active movement. I found that on my old pump, I would wake up high a lot of times, and just resolving that small issue, just a small creep overnight, like to be able to wake up now in the morning without an alarm clock, not have to force myself to wake. When you open your eyes in the morning, you shouldn't really be groggy, you know.
Yeah.
You really should be ready to go if you got a full night's sleep. And it didn't matter how much sleep I got. I'd wake up at 220 blood sugar and barely get your eyes open, and it's not until you drop my blood sugar again that I actually feel good. But
It's crazy what happens when we just take care of our bodies.
right?
All right. John, thank you so much for joining us on the Diabetes Survival Guide show. I know my audience will have a lot of takeaways from it. And if you all are wanting to invest into some awesome briefs, then definitely check out Pump Clothing Company. I'll leave the description down below of where you can find that link to that. And I believe John's going to be working on female clothing as well to support their ability to manage their type 1 diabetes and their ability to carry their pumps in a way that it's not messing up and everything. So with that being said, John, how can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on most socials: TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram. My handle is at JohnnyDMN. You can find Pump on all four of those: Facebook Reels, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, at Pump Clothing Company.
All right.
And to add on top of the female stuff, if any females have recommendations or something that they want that isn't currently available, I am open to suggestions. And if you go to the women's collections portion of the website, there's a small box that you can fill out for recommendations if there's anything you want to see.
All right. Thank you all so much again for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you all in the next episode.